All right, looks like we're getting pretty close here, so I'm just going to kick us off real quick. We're going to talk today about change, course correction, and all the materials that we read about in the pages we read here over the last week. Adam is our guest host today, and he prepared some questions which hopefully most, if not all of you, have a copy of, so that we can kind of keep this conversation moving. And I just remind everyone that we can just take the conversation wherever it goes. So let's do that, and then like we have been, let's try to identify some key takeaways as well so that we can all leave with something actionable that we take away and learn. It kind of becomes new concrete information for us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adam to kick us off.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tim. Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And like Tim said, definitely want this to just be discussion-based and just have a nice conversation with everyone going around. The questions are guidelines, not law. And then, I definitely would like us to have some action items to take away from this to use in our daily lives, whether it be business or personal, to see how we can change this for the better or how we can approach different situations differently. So the first thing I just want to ask, through reading the material, were there any really cool aha moments or things that kind of like hit a light bulb for people? Some like initial conversation we can start off with.
The part about flying and how making continual smaller course corrections can keep you on the right path. I don't know, I like the whole course correction conversation that it had and the reasons why people decide not to make corrections when they're needed, and it was
That was a good one too. We can actually just jump into that question since you brought that up. So that's question number 6. If you guys want to go down to that on the sheet I gave you. So the question I propose is, why is course correction vital to the long-term sustainability to a company? And kind of like Ricky was saying, is there's a couple of types of course correction. There's small course correction, large course correction. And maybe someone want to give an example of both, or good, bad, or what could that be the benefits?
Something to add there. I'll just kick us off with, generally, without course correction, we will not have the direction that we need. We talk a lot about clear expectations being one of the things that we know is important. It's referenced a lot in this book, but course correction is definitely needed, and even just little course corrections throughout the day. Everything is changing around us, so we have to be changing and adapting at every moment so that we can course correct on the fly, and having that environment that is built to handle a lot of course correction is what we're trying to go for here. So that's an area where you could take your mind as like, what can you do to make the environment around you and the people around you be more acceptable of change and course corrections.
I thought it was interesting on page 109 at the end. It said at the bottom of the page, it said there's a downside to becoming excellent at making minor course corrections. However, your efforts may be barely noticed. And then I think, just a lot of the times we see the huge mistakes that happen and they keep getting covered up, and she highlighted something here, but then the minor ones you don't notice because it's getting you back on the track and then you're heading down the right direction. So that was great.
Just a reminder to everybody too, when you're speaking into the mic, keep it up close so we can hear. It's supposed to be off. Oh. I guess I didn't even hear it until you said it.
Jason, I think that's a good point. That was the one that stuck out to me too. And the question that I kept going back to is, it talks about people wanting to be a hero, and people celebrating the big hero moments. It talks about like the biggest loser, someone who loses a bunch of weight, wins the contest. Hello? That's a little loud. Alright, I'll whistle. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was really cool. It talks about people who love to celebrate their big hero moments because they're big, there's big changes. It's very noticeable. The question I kept going to is, what can we do as a company to celebrate small course corrections, knowing that the long-term effect is going to be much better, even though in the moment they seem small.
I have a pretty good example of course correction is not needed. My prior business that I was associated with, it was largely driven by the market. And the market for this business kind of crashed after an event, and we neglected to adjust to that supply chain. And with that being said, we always assumed that it was going to recorrect itself, it was going to come back. Never came back, and with that, the business was closed. Because we neglected the course correction that needed to happen immediately, which could have prevented the business from going under. We were attached to what we had going, and thought that those good times were going to come back and everything was going to be cool. Obviously.
I had one time Eric Japenga, I don't remember exactly how we got here, but he mentioned the word action, or what's the one thing that needs to happen in order to something. I don't remember what it was, but it was action. And that's what course correction is. It's actually deciding to take an action, being decisive and choosing to do something. And on 110 it says, this requires that you see course correction as evidence you have a growth mindset, a competitive advantage for your company. So just think about that for a moment, then internalize that self, see what you can do with it, and dream up in your role today about what you do and how you work, and how does that relate to your impact and what you're bringing to the company, and ultimately what should be returned to you, over a period of time and through your experience here. A collection of your efforts turns into an overarching description of your career. Someone looking down, your reflection of your own career can be a result of, taking these actions when course corrections are needed, maybe not even required, but when opportunity to course correct is in front of you and you choose not to versus choosing to do that. You've all done both of those, we all do, but there's some critical moments, especially if you just take the successes that you've had in your career. So think about the things that you've done to bring you to where you are today, and imagine if you wouldn't have taken those opportunities to course correct or to actually take action during that time, then what would have happened? And what if you did that repeatedly? So, that could have changed things a lot. We all probably realize that one thing would have changed things. Does that mean better or worse? Not necessarily, but a series of decisions to not course correct or not take action will result in, probably status quo. And status quo is not how you became who you are today, right?
Anyone else have some aha moments? Okay, I'll jump into question one then. Question one I proposed is, why is change that is unwanted, unexpected, or forced cause us to be resistant or opposed? So the book talks about how when it's something out of our control, we tend to be resistant or opposed to it. What are the things that causes that resistance? What is it in us that makes us feel something?
I think fear, definitely fear of the unexpected, not knowing what's going to happen if I take that step out is one thing that really causes us to take pause and not just jump in. Sometimes that's for a good purpose, right? It keeps us safe in situations, but if we want ourselves to be safe all the time, then we're probably not going to take the chances that we need to in order to grow.
We talked. Oh, it's dead. There you go. We've talked about this in previous sessions, but I think just really making sure that we're all aware that we know that we have a brain, and our brain is actually working for us and against us at times. So just understanding that, and like we don't need to necessarily discuss it a lot here, but to Trisha's point, when we have fear, our brain's there to both protect us, and at the same time, because it's so good at protecting us, it can relate to the things that it don't go very well sometimes when we have fear, and we have unneeded fear, for example. So something to continue to be aware of.
That kind of ties into the next questions that I had. It's kind of, how would we approach unwanted change if we knew the benefits of it in the moment? Like if it was, clear communication, if we knew it was going to benefit the company, maybe not us, would be accepted differently. Or if we knew the benefits were going to be for us directly, how would we approach it then? And it kind of just ties in, saying it's a mindset thing. What can we as individuals do to be more open and adaptable to change, when those come?
I think when it comes to unwanted change and the benefits to the company and us, there's a level of trust where we believe that we're all working for the best interest of Quickstop, which we may not always understand up front because we're not entrenched into what's happening in the department, the decisions that are being made, and all of that. There's a certain level of information that we're aware of, but if we, as we look around, us consistently operating in alignment with the behaviors, and as we look at some of the strategies in place to go towards, I think we're preparing ourselves to be more open and adaptable to change, just simply by observing the consistency of those behaviors and knowing that as we're making changes, it's done in the best interest, and we're going to try to provide adequate communication around those things, but it's also, we should take opportunity to ask questions, clarifying questions if it's unknown. So I think just working towards trust in the organization and others is steps in the right direction. Being open.
Here's one to keep us going. What can I do to help all of you trust the company, the organization, your leaders more than you do today? It can be general or specific. Let's keep in mind, let's not make it personal, but I mean, if it's directed at me, I'm sitting here, you can make it personal, but if it's directed at someone else, you can't. Joan's laughing because this feels like a let's get real meeting type question, doesn't it?
Carla, go.
Short click. Short click.
Okay, I think just keeping the communication open, because when we know what's going on, we can think about it, plan for it. When we don't, then things are, it might become an unwanted change because we don't know enough about it. So I feel like communication is the best answer to moving forward for everybody.
I think mine is related. I believe the book has spoken about a few times that there can be less drama when there's slightly more transparency. And I think that, to Carla's point, not that all the nitty-gritty details need to be known, but I think everyone feels the need for context, and that's higher for some and lower for others. And I think you've spoken about before in your other meetings where we get to ask you questions that it's a how do you strike the balance, and sometimes it's too much and too little, but I don't know, I always err on the side that a little more just direct conversation is always better. I feel like that's the environment we try to create here, is one where we want to promote that open communication. And I think as someone who communicates and isn't always succinct when I'm talking and I have to think through what I want to say, I always try to challenge myself to stop and think through what I mean. I'll have a whole lot of grabbing people's time and asking questions. So I think there's a level that employees of ownership employees can take into that if they have the questions, it's up to us to go and see the answers. Because I've never found a leader isn't willing to tell me what I want to know. Sometimes they just don't know what needs to be told, and we're busy and moving quickly. So I think there's ownership on both sides to ask the questions and they don't know what you mean.
So we have a few new faces out there. So you have some pretty unbiased opinions so far, or maybe very biased because everything is just really good so far. But Grace isn't here at the moment, but for at least the three of you, two of you now, I'm interested, just generally speaking, what are your expectations around the level of fear, communication, transparency, and how things are supposed to be here? I'm calling out the newbies right on day 2. Go. You just pointed. You're ready for the mic.
Say it one more time.
Yeah, so, coming in here, this is day 2, right? What are your expectations of our culture around fear, transparency, communication, and how you go about things? And just generally speaking, before you get to experience it, what would you like us to do really well as it relates to those things? Anything that's on your mind around that?
That was kind of loaded. So you talked about like fear, communication, things like that. And one thing that I really took away from yesterday, speaking with a bunch of different people, was that they don't want to be worried about they don't want people to be worried about not speaking their mind and being worried about if they say something it's going to be the wrong thing and they're going to jeopardize their job or something like that. And it's so people not being scared to reach out and speak their mind is really important, I think. And to go out like what you were saying about what my expectations are for the company, I think I kind of said it to a few of you, is like the beautiful facility that we're in kind of matches like the company culture that everybody practices. And I feel like when you're in an environment that allows you to feel like you're comfortable and things like that, you're able to kind of keep that company culture alive and connect with your coworkers.
Would you like to add anything, or would you like to be off the hook? All right.
Expectation, not high expectations, but communication and really interview process. Brittany, Kirsten, they were telling me that be open to ideas, make sure you ask questions. So when I was interviewing people yesterday, people were saying the one thing was don't get away from the door, don't be in touch with people, ask questions. So I think to guide me to that, maybe just push me with a group. Yeah, like to push me and make sure that I'm encouraged that I can do that. So that's why I was stepping into it.
Thank you to the newbies. Get that out of the way early for them. So, you know, I heard a lot there about an encouraging, open environment, and one that both of them said they feel it on day 2, they see it happening, and what I think at least many people, hopefully this isn't true of everyone, but many people experience then that they meet these barriers and challenges, and then they can't get over the hurdles that come from the interpersonal things that happen with people, just generally speaking. And you know, people are inside of the company, and then you have organizational structure, and that presents challenges. So just I would encourage just for everyone, but especially for the 2 new people that here, just to kind of remember how you feel today and try to feel that way next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now if you're still here, and just keep that attitude. That's what we're trying to build, and the more people that do it well, it's a cumulative effort. If even just the 2 of you do it well compared to 2 new hires that don't do it well, we're better as a company because of it, because it's really a key thing about what we're trying to create here.
Yeah, I think I can attest to that, because, you know, coming here from a totally different industry, it's, you know, just, you get so excited about the culture and the people, and everyone's friendly, and everyone just looks out for your best interest, and this is a very family-oriented atmosphere. And then, you know, like Kim was saying, keep that mindset, because there's times where I kind of hit some lows, and I'm just like, God, what's going on? And it's hard to get out of a little bit of a funk. But then you just kind of have faith in your teammates and your peers and your managers in the company that we're all here for like the best interest of each other and the company and growth. I mean, we're in peace out now, so we're all responsible for each other's future, and it just kind of gives you a positive outlook. Like, you know, even though there may be some tough times, you know, we're all working for you. We're all working on each other's side for everyone to grow in multiple ways.
So I wanted to try to, again, make this a little interactive. So just think about what you can do to make this active. You have a hard conversation that is impending, right? And again, feel free to think about one at work or outside of work, but it's a hard conversation that you'd like to have, especially if it was convenient and you knew it would go well. Like, we agree with that? It's a hard conversation. It's conveniently timed, and I know it's gonna go well. Now I'm pretty likely to do it, right? So is one of those things holding you back from having that hard conversation? The conveniency around it, or the fear that it might not go the way you want, or the risk? Even though you're maybe not afraid to have that conversation, but what if you have that conversation and it doesn't go well because there are 2 people involved, and then now there's a new piece of information and you have a different relationship there. If we can make this actionable, you know, think about it anywhere, but I would encourage, I want to give everybody a minute here just to think about that. And then the first thing that you want to do when you do is to find the right setting to do it. Try to get calm, collected, and be more objective. Make sure you're thinking about the level of empathy that you're delivering it with, and that you have that person's attention completely. And then, you know, not make it personal as much as you can, because anytime you're having a hard conversation, the reason you think it's a hard conversation is because it likely is going to come across as personal for the person on the other end. So I just want you to take a minute, and for everybody to think about that. Feel free to write your own note down. I'm not going to call you out and make you talk about it, but think about it for a minute, and then decide how you might want to go about that, and then realize that you need some time to get prepared if you are going to go about it. Just take a minute, think about that, and then if you get to a point where you have some comments you want to share, then go ahead. Otherwise, in about a minute, we'll take it back up. so hopefully most of you have been able to at least start in your mind, right? You have enough started that you can spend some time later to try to decide if, when you're going to, just because you've gone this far doesn't mean you have to have this conversation, right? If it doesn't go well, it's not my fault, but you get to choose. It's your conversation. So, but I'm sitting here trying to think of like, can I use an example and then I got to thinking, not really, because it's my conversation that I need to have with that person, right? Regardless of what it is, work or personal related, it's my conversation, so why would I share it all with you ahead of time, right? So it's another thing to think about. Now, if you need someone to process with at work, hopefully you have that person. If you don't have that person and you don't know where to get it, then you can ask me or ask someone else that you trust, and you'll find a place where you can have that conversation to get your brain working the right way. Personally, if you don't have that, I would encourage you to identify on that as well, and maybe the first step is to offer that up in return to someone else first before you're hitting them with your own problem, for example. But it was really interesting as I was processing that is I can't really share anything because it's not my place to share it with you. It's my place to share it with them. It's our conversation. So.
On page 81, I really like the part, page 81, I believe. It said, like leaders see choice and opportunity for growth, even when they are backed up against the wall. As a result, like leaders transform uncertain team drama into a noble purpose. The first one occurs when the like leader recognizes choice, even when others see no alternatives. Does anyone have a personal example when they were backed up against the wall and they were able to see choice and opportunity in that situation?
When we closed the business, I was out of a job. And I remember driving by Quick Stop, going to Cedar Falls, to the road trip and everything, back and forth. I always wondered what's Quick Stop, and I always was drawn to what's Quick Stop. I started looking at it online probably about 6 months before we closed our business. And I kept on looking online at the job opportunities. And so my back was finally against the wall. I put in the application to Quick Stop, taking any position that was available. Knowing that I knew Quick Stop was going to be something that would provide a future for it. And so the opportunity with my back being against the wall pushed my hand into looking more into Quick Stop, getting the job at Quick Stop, knowing that there was going to be opportunity. And a year and a half later, coming up on 2 years, the best decision I made as far as business places to work.
It's interesting, we have a lot of stories of people who just took whatever job was open or, found a landing spot and then are seeking opportunity. There's a lot of that has happened and is happening all around. So it's good. It's another one of the fundamental things that gets me out of bed, and probably a lot of you as well, is to help support all that happening. Adam, you posed this question to me, and I tried to think about a specific example, but I don't know if this is, hopefully it doesn't come off wrong, but I really don't ever feel like my back is up against the wall. Yeah, even if someone had a gun to my head and I'm up against the wall, I would realize I'm up against the wall, but I would have options, right? And so I would quickly get to, I have options, and I was trying to find a specific example, and the worst moments in company history come to my mind, and those are just things I'm not going to talk about today.
Can you at least share maybe like your mindset when you go into some of those tough situations? So you obviously say you don't feel like you're against the wall and you're not out of choices. What's constantly going through your mind in situations like that? Like what do you do to prepare yourself, or what have you done to train yourself that when you are encountering a tough spot, you're always knowing if there's some other opportunity?
Yeah, what was the first part of that question?
The first part is, are you talking about individual question.
No, what you just said.
So basically,
Yeah.
like, what do you do? Like, how have you got to the point where your mindset sees opportunity and alternatives even though
Yeah.
you're in a tough spot?
I was thinking about my answer, so I forgot the question. But I think I'm just trying to train my auto response. And honestly, we've all been here at some point in our lives where we're overwhelmed with things. And growing this business, I've never done this before, so there's been times in the business where it's been extremely overwhelming. And all I can do out of survival instinct is just to dumb that down to non-emotional. And I spent way too many years like making it entirely emotional. And so finally, I've trained my brain and trained myself to be a whole lot less emotional about it and really understand what my values are, what drives me in making decisions, but then using my brain to make a good decision under a non-stressed environment, and just knowing that that's the best thing to do just forces me to do that. There was a part 2, right? I think there's just a lot that can be said we've talked in the previous sessions about clarity and awareness, and I think there's a lot that can be said about awareness or situational awareness, and just realizing like right now in this very moment in this place, we're not in a lot of danger. Like even this conversation is not threatening, but potentially, I'm sure there's at least one of you that if we were sitting in my office would feel somewhat threatened or in danger, especially if you didn't know why you were there, right? So just little things like that can totally change. But just thinking about how you handle those things and trying to make them as stress-free for yourself as possible, because that's how you're going to be your best self, is if you can make them as stress-free as possible. And I think that carries over to your personal relationships as well. When you can process something in a 2-person conversation and you're trying to stay very unemotional about it, not on the outside, but on the inside. Like it a lot of times can be on the outside, it's emotional, but on the inside, you've got to be able to process the information coming at you, or you're going to say all the wrong things, send all the wrong micro messages, and it's just not going to go well, right?
Anyone got context on that? Anyone want to add anything?
I wonder what ultimately the belief and conviction of the mission purpose has to do with not finding that you accidents in the law, almost like the surrender until really it's done, it's over with, and everything. But that's where I wonder if, in preparation for those moments, it's just believe that this is working, believe that why we show up every day is working. The end goal, the vision that we put in place is working. So it keeps you from feeling like there's just a lack of options. I don't think that's total remedy to it, but I would say that you're not going to find yourself fighting in those situations, even if you don't know what the next step is.
I think it would be a good time to capture any takeaways that we have so far. Do we have a volunteer to document those? Jeremy's got it this time. So what's a takeaway that we've already had? I'll start with one, is that we're at ClickStop, we're shooting to create an environment. We're shooting to create an environment with no fear. Only because that means that we'll get as close as possible to no fear. Not because I think there will be no fear.
Like what you said earlier about taking the emotion out of things when you're in those situations or in those conversations, just try to be calculated or analytical instead of maybe like a personal bias takeaways or action items from what we've talked about so far?
Course correction is action.
Course correction is action. Tammy?
Having the tough conversation that we started now, and getting ourselves together, somebody to help us sort of through that.
What was the first part? Having a tough conversation.
The one you just got now.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And it'll come back to me.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of wanted to tie that into one of our questions, and Tim kind of brought it up. So it was on question number 7. It talks about the 3 major barriers to providing course correction. Now, whether it be like an accountability conversation, like you're talking about, or a hard conversation you want with someone. It says the 3 major barriers to course correction are inconvenience, attachment to the plan, and emotional resistance. And just when you were reading that section and kind of going through that, did anyone have any personal thoughts or action items towards those 3 things on maybe it related to you when you have those conversations and you maybe came up with some ways to overcome those or work against them in those situations? Did anyone have anything that they wanted to share regarding that? Yeah, the 3 things were inconvenience, attachment to the plan, and emotional resistance. And it was tied into course correction.
So last week we were talking about the values that we have and one that is spending more time with friends and children. And we talked about the board of directors that I sit on and have a lot of time. So we would confidentiality and sort of creating 7 friends in that board. And that's a tough conversation we have to have with all of our emotions. So I'm having to admit that I don't commit myself and take responsibility for that. I don't want to do it. But I teach it, so that's kind of what I relate to that.
So on page 105, it says, the less comfortable a leader is with dealing with her fears, the more likely she is to avoid both accountability and course correction. So what you're saying is you're getting more comfortable with dealing with your fears around stepping down, right? And in this case, it's probably more about you, like you said, emotional resistance, than it is the environment, the individuals on the board with you, for example.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's pride, it's feeling of failure, it's admitting I was wrong, like it's all of those things.
Pride, feeling of failure, admitting you were wrong. Yeah.
Over-calculating my bandwidth.
Yeah. Or what if it was just that things have changed and this is a course correction because things changed, so you have to change. You're just course correcting, but it's not an emotional thing.
I'm trying to get there.
I have the same thing with my farm. It's a love-hate relationship. Yeah.
One thing that came to my mind when I was reading that section, whether it was like internal or external for course correction and the 3 resistances, for me it just kind of kept me coming back to this sheet here, and it just encouraged me to know that if there are things that need correcting, whether internal or external, it's encouraged and required of us. I mean, we talked about accountability, that you got the core values and things in order to maintain our culture and workplace environment. Sometimes, even though those are hard conversations, it's encouraging to know that it's expected to have those conversations and go on different.
I wanted to add another takeaway. It's similar to what Marissa said along the same lines, but it is this statement that course correction is evidence you have a growth mindset. Because it's change, it's action, and it's change that is growth, action, change. So the course correction is the observed behavior that shows that you have a growth mindset. And then the second part of that, it says a competitive advantage for your company. That's pretty interesting as well, because those people who have a change growth mindset are taking action, course correcting, pursuing opportunity, doing all the things that become a competitive advantage for a company. That's what makes our company great, is we do that better than a lot of other companies, I think, all things equal.
One of the takeaways and action items that I had dealt with the 4 quadrants, and I know we really haven't gotten into that, but talked about how one situation can have a different perspective from each quadrant. And so for me, my action item is when in those situations, figure out what quadrant I'm in, and then try to observe it from the lens of the other side of the situation. Figure out what maybe someone else might be perceiving that situation as in that quadrant, and then be more understanding of it. It might help with further communication or understanding of things like that.
So would it be correct to say that's a 2-step process for you? Step 1, is this a wanted or unwanted change? Step 2, is this expected or unexpected? And then you know right where you're at, right?
The third step would be to figure out where maybe the other person is at, maybe observing of that.
Right. I'll pick on Kirsten again. So, for example, Kirsten, what if we sat down and I said, in my uncomfortable situation that I never call you into my office, and I call you into my office and I said, here, we're gonna have a change today, and that change is that we're doing away with your role. That's unwanted and unexpected, right? That's horrible. So it makes you uncomfortable right now. I'm uncomfortable even saying it, but it's such a good example. But that makes you really uncomfortable, right? You quickly know that's unwanted and unexpected, and you know what was just happening in your mind, even though it's not a real situation. You know what was happening, right? Yeah. So think about those, anticipate those, and reason for doing it. What's the purpose of trying to do that? I think it's just so that we can control our emotions, so that we can serve ourselves as good as possible, given the circumstances. Because you didn't ask for that fake conversation, but if it was real, you owe it to yourself to respond as good as possible. So we know those things are going to happen to us. It happens to all of us. We have situations of unwanted, unexpected change. So think about how you'll deal with them and how you're going to quickly rebound from them. We see it all around. We all process that differently. We all rebound at different speeds, and we all do those things differently that come along with unwanted, unexpected change. But the time to get prepared for that is probably before it happens, reflecting on it when you're in a really good headspace, so that you're prepared for it when it happens.
Yeah, so this is an extreme example, but I'll do that, and I've always done that in terminating someone. You have to run the whole spectrum of what their potential reaction is going to be, so you're best prepared to handle it. You have to be able to pivot on the dime, depending on what that reaction is. Some people, not so much here, but certainly in GoDaddy, when there's a lot of termination, these people that I thought were going to have a really bad reaction, it went totally different than I planned, and it was easy, and the people that I thought would be easy became violent, and it's everything in between. So just being prepared for that helps you, and someone should have that awareness of how they may or may not respond.
So, who feels like the discussion today, share something with us that has been helpful for you today in this discussion, so we can guide. We're about halfway. We have 3 or 4 of these left, I think. 3 maybe. We're winding down on time today, 9 minutes till 1 o'clock. What has been helpful today in the conversation, and how can we have a really effective 3 more sessions? Or what in particular have you taken away today, so that we know this is helpful as well? Because I'm a big proponent of change, and we can cancel this too. If everyone's like, I feel obligated to come because I'm already here, or it's okay, it's so-so, we should just throw the cards up in the air and do something different.
Let's explore that thought for a moment and just see where we go.
For me, it was helpful to kind of reframe in my mind how I'm going to approach this conversation and just think about it differently. Even just going through that exercise and changing how it's teed up in my mind is helpful, and that kind of changes my approach. So in one of the chapters, they talked about pilot and how he has to course correct. And I think knowing that that's a positive thing in your mind, each time you're thinking, maybe I should do things a little bit different and embracing it is something that I do quite. Sometimes I keep thinking, when I'm working, I should probably do it this way, but this gets faster. So maybe course correcting can change how in the long run figure down the road, how easily you can be more efficient. So, and keep that in mind that that's okay to course correct.
I was just thinking about the statement that enlightened leaders recognize choice when others don't see an alternative. And I see like that to being a victim of circumstance. And the people who are leaders, we talked about, leaders are people who take action. And kind of seeing that as the difference between a leader and a non-leader, as somebody who sees choice where others don't see choice, and see opportunity for action where people feel paralyzed by the circumstance they're in.
So some of mine has actually been more personal, and going all the way back to the beginning. I have a little big brothers and sisters, and he's been struggling in school. And just seeing, the book talks about when we receive a threat, we go into that fight or flight, and then that stumps our learning. And so even seeing how early on that starts is crazy, because that explains so much of what he's working through right now. And personally, I think there's going to be unwanted or unexpected change, right? Like I didn't want another knee surgery. But I can't change it. So it's keeping that mindset of you can only control what you can control. It doesn't do us any good to look back and, how are we going to take this in and move forward in a productive way?
So in winding down, what can we do to make our next session really productive? Or what could we do? So let's just let's see what the choices are. We can do anything.
First of all, I really like the conversation. I think we've had really good discussions so far throughout the times that we've had, but maybe a change-up could be someone organizing the questions to be discussed in smaller groups, all meeting at the same time, and then spending like the last 20 minutes discussing all together as a group what the discussion was at the table.
Option one, great. Is it a race game?
Yeah, I like that. And I think something that has been beneficial for me is when you give us a specific challenge to go tackle. I never turn down a challenge, so I really, that just motivates me.
All right, so here's your challenge. Go have that hard conversation if you want to, and do it really well. There was a hand over here, Jeremy. If you want to, and do it really well. Or don't do it if you're not going to do it well.
I think along with that, if we take the content that we've gone through it and identify some action that we want to apply prior to, and we can share that. Because I think that the action and the challenge is a good way to focus information into something that's actually tangible. And if we can identify some prior to and reporting that back to whether that's a small group, large group. I think it helps. There's a lot of conversation around the way that we could do things. But this is a way to talk about how we apply the information to something that's happened. So you can get ahead of it and decide on action and bring that example back.
Okay, we're running out of time, so here's what I need. 4 volunteers to lead your group. This is what you're responsible for. We'll count the number of people in the room, we'll divide it by 4, get those people in your team. You're responsible for hopefully getting them here to our next session, and then having a discussion. It's everyone's responsibility to have the discussion, and it's that person's responsibility to write down the key takeaways and share them when we come together as a group. So we'll do, at 12:30, we'll come back for 30 minutes of discussion. So you'll have to, actually we'll do 12:35. We've got to get warmed up a little bit. So 12:35 we'll come back for discussion next time.